Welcome back. This is our next video in the series. Something I noticed I should have done a long time ago and forgot about for some strange reason. I want to show you the basics of turning platters. It doesn't matter whether you're using thin stock or thick stock, the technique is going to be precisely the same. I'm going to take you through all the very basic steps. Just to show you some examples. This was done out of a piece of wood that's less than ½ an inch thick, and it's still a platter. The platter's no more than a bowl that with a thickness consideration. What I did here is exactly the same as what I did with this one. Let's not worry about decoration, but typical back. You know what you need to do is look at your dinner plates in your kitchen and find the shapes of the rims and the bowls, and you'll find something to follow as a pattern. I've separated the rim from the bowl with a bead, which is one way of doing it. Now, whether the platter has a small bowl and a large rim or vice versa, this is still basically a platter. One could think of it as a shallow bowl, but I thought of it as a platter. When you get into turning platters, you start looking at various decorative techniques. I'm not going to go into decorative techniques, but this is a platter. In this case, I curved this outward like this to allow me to apply this kind of finish. Same back. So I'm going to take you through all the basic steps, and once you have a platter, then you can look at various different ways of decorating it if you choose. But the technique's going to be the same. Well, first thing I have to do is make some judgments in terms of thicknesses and distances and so on. So I drilled a hole here that represents how deep to go on this side, but let me show you how I got to that. I'm going to go to the blackboard and show you how I calculated how deep this hole needs to be, because that sets the depth of the inside of the platter. Let's go to the whiteboard. Okay, I've rolled the whiteboard in, and I want to show you how I came up with my math. So let's take a look at that blank from the edge. And just to make it simple, I'm going to call this 1 inch thick. Just could be any distance. Now I know on the back side of this, I'm going to have to grab it and create a recess for the chuck to hold it while I'm turning the inside. In other words, I'm going to have to create this. And I know also that I don't need it very deep. If I cut it nice and square, I can get by with 1/8 of an inch. That means I have 7/8 left. Well, now I've got to decide how thick the bottom of this is going to be. Let's look at my platter, whatever its shape turns out to be. Probably more like that. Doesn't matter. But I've got to know what this distance here is going to be. What am I willing to live with in terms of thickness? Let's make it 1/4 of an inch. That says that I can drill a hole here for my screw chuck for my very first step. That's going to be 5/8 deep. And so I'm going to start by going to the drill press, taking my square piece of wood. I tend to blob the corners off of it, just makes it easier for turning purposes. And then I'm going to drill a hole here in the center. And I know I'm going to drill it 5/8 deep, because now as I'm starting to shape this piece of wood, when I get to the bottom of that hole, I know I'm at my wall thickness. Now I might actually go a little thicker or a little thinner depending on what I want to do, and the shape of the rim, whether it's like this or flat and like that, it doesn't matter. I'm only establishing my final bottom wall thickness. So what I have done, I've taken my blank. I haven't done anything to this side yet, but I bobbed the corners and I drilled a hole. This piece of wood here is a little over 1 inch thick. I don't remember the dimensions exactly right now, but my hole in this thing is just right at 1 inch deep. So this is about 1 3/8 thick. So let's go back to the lathe, screw this piece onto the headstock, and create this. That's the first step. Once that is done, I'll shape the rest of the back side of it. And then we'll grab this in our 4-jaw chuck in this recess and shape the front side. And those are the steps we're going to do on every platter that we ever turn. Let's go back to the lathe. I went to the drill press and I drilled a hole, as I said, and the hole is to accommodate what we call a screw chuck. Most of the 4-jaw chucks you buy comes with one of their own manufacture. This one requires a drill bit this size. I happen to use a brad point bit, so I had to be very careful to recognize the tip of the brad point is the depth of the hole, not the diameter of the bit. So I had to be cautious about that. Set that aside. When I mount the screw chuck in my 4-jaw chuck, be sure to get it mounted properly. Depending on the thickness of the blank you're running, this may stick out farther than you want to allow. For instance, look at that 1/2-inch piece I showed you earlier. I didn't go in very far. So in cases like that, I have made a series of wooden washers that fit over the shaft here to technically shorten the length of this to whatever distance I might, well, not that one, might need. So on this particular blank I'm working with now, I don't need the washers. I'm trying to get this off. But I have a series of these spacers. So what I've done is drill the hole and screw this in. I've measured to be sure that this is not too long. It must set on the top edge of these jaws. That is the reference point. The screw itself is simply to hold it back into that position. So I'm going to screw it on. And if it screws on a little hard because it's a really hard wood, consider the possibility of waxing the hole. And if you have problems because of leverage, many times I can do it this way, hold the blank, pull the chuck. Now it's almost there, but I want this to sit smoothly on all the jaws. So I've turned it until I can see no gap between the top of the jaws and the top of the piece of wood. I also have to be careful if it's a softer wood that I don't turn so far that I strip the thread, strip out this hole by cutting the thread free. I've knocked the corners off. That's kind of typical what I do. It just saves a little bit of banging around. And the first thing I'm going to do is make this thing round. And that's a bowl gouge cut. And here's something you need to also know about doing pieces where the grain of the wood has both end grain, side grain, end grain, side grain. If I come in here and cut at this point along here, I'm going to pull up fibers on here. I'm going to push them down here. So when you're cutting across a piece of cross-grain wood, bowl blanks, platter blanks, cut from the side across the fibers. So my first cuts are going to be going horizontally, purpose of which is to get this into a round form. So let me get ready. Glasses, speed is down to 0. I'm just a little bit low. And so here we go. It's also not running exactly true. The wood may not be perfectly. I'll take care of that. If it's not perfectly flat, we'll fix that later. So I'm cutting across the fibers. So as I made that first cut, that's a start. That's a clean surface. A little rougher here because that's end grain, side grain, smooth as glass, and that's that situation. Now, I got a little farther away from the wood as I approach the other side, so I'm going to bring the tool rest around farther to eliminate that on the second cut. Tool rest proper. Tool is rolled about 45 degrees. And that's just about it. Let's see if it's round. One more cut. I didn't go all the way, you saw. The reason I didn't go all the way, still a spot, but that, I'll catch it. One more cut. Always one more cut. Got it. Now the reason I didn't go through, there's nothing supporting it here. If I do this, I could very easily tear some surface off, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to finish the cut doing the same thing, but going that way. Change hands. Okay, so we got it round. That's all I've done is rounded it up. And if you look at this cut, side grain is smooth, end grain has a little bit of grain protrusion, in other words, tear. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure this is flat, because I'm not satisfied that when I saw it initially, it was dead flat. So let's come over here, get our tool rest in position. And I'm going to make a few pull cuts across here just to flatten this side. Tool's at 45-degree angle. Handle's down at 45 degrees, and I'm literally just leaning back. So what we have now is a surface that is flat to the lathe. Okay, so we've got the blank. Literally, the blank's ready to go. Okay, the next thing I need to do is to establish a rebate in here that the chuck will expand into. Before I mounted this, I took a measurement of the outside diameter of these jaws. That's what's going to expand into it. I have transferred it to these calipers and locked it. So what I now need to do is put that mark here on the blank itself. I'm not going to touch both pieces, both wings. I'm going to touch one. And I'm going to try to line the other one up with it. I can see the mark. Let me lay this aside so you can see it. Maybe that'll help. So that is going to be what I'm going to expand into. It could be a little larger than that, but I want it as close as I can get to the closed jaw position. That's the position in which the jaws are most round. As they open up, they become less able to contact all the surfaces. So this is the hole I want to open up, and I'm going to do that with my skew chisel. But I'm going to use it like a scraper and come across here. And by laying it down, it's a narrower tool. And I want to go 1/8 deep according to my measurements. So let's give myself that 1/8. 129 thousandths. That's close enough, but that's all deeper I need to go. And I'm literally scraping. And I want this corner square. Oh, gotta go deeper. Yeah, you can use another tool if you want. I've been my habit to do it this way. Believe it or not, that's still not 1/8 of an inch deep. For a flatman, let's just check. Okay, got it. So that's the depth. Now, this is a part that once I get it done, I can actually finish this. I can sand it, put decorations on it, whatever. I'll never need to touch this surface again. All I'm doing is flattening it out. And check the squareness of the corner. Looks good. Okay, so now I can actually reverse this into the chuck when I'm ready to do that. But I'm not ready. But I have that. I could decorate that. Easily call it done. Where's my funny little diamond point tool, just for fun. Consider this sanded. Whatever. So now the next thing I need to do is to actually determine how big around the base of the platter is going to be. Now in most cases, platters, unlike bowls, have a very large base. Sometimes 70% of the diameter is base. Look at your kitchen plate. Take one out of the cabinet and look at it. You'll find that the base is very wide. So I may need to go out here for the base. And then from here on out, that'll be the underside of the rim. So I'm going to shape the rim at this point and leave this part generally alone. I'm going to come back and finish it at the very, very end. So now let's start shaping this. I'm going to make the rim kind of curved from the underside. Check my gouge. I was using this one, I guess. And I'm a little high for a gouge. It was fine for the skew. That'll do it. So, if the blank is thicker than I need it to be, I'm going to take an extra thickness off from the top side when I get there. So I don't need it this thick, but I'll take it down later. So that's pretty typical for most platters. We do a cleanup cut. Now at all sorts of different points along here we could be sanding. And I'm not doing any of that, as you well know. Sanding isn't part of the need for the demonstration, but I do have a pencil mark. I'm going to make it go away. guess I will sand a little bit. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is later on I'm going to use this surface with my hand to support it. And I want to have no rough spots here. Good enough. I now can run my hand on that surface when I need to for support when this gets thin. So we have the back ready to reverse into our chuck. So we are going to unscrew it from our screw chuck. Take the screw chuck out. I measured this so I had it accurate. I'm going to close the jaws down, press the blank over tightly, and expand the jaws. Now there's a lot of wood here, a lot of mass, so I can actually torque it with a great deal of pressure if I wanted to. I'm not going to risk tearing anything. So now the piece is mounted into a slot that's only 1/8 of an inch deep. And we're now ready to go work on the face. First thing I want to do is, I don't like it this thick. Let's put the skew away, we don't need it again. Let's take this thickness down a little bit. There's my hole, I can use that for depth alignment. Probably use my bigger gouge. Speed is 0 so I can bring it up slowly. It's running pretty darn good. So I'm just going to take some thickness off. I think that's what I'm going to stop with, so let me do a cleanup cut on that, really slow and tight. 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, so as I lean back, I don't fall over. Very light. Now, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a little bit of sound beginning as I got down here closer to the edge, because the wood is thin and it's beginning to want to vibrate a little bit. Now, the tendency is to want to round this edge off. Just don't do that. If I come in here with any kind of tool, there's a real good possibility I can tear this. It's much easier to, if you want its radius, do it with sandpaper at the very end. It's safer. Now, the other thing I need to know is the rim goes down to the base. Oh, let me measure this different like that. About that far. So these 2 points here are about the same. So I want to kind of know where this is all rim. This will be the bowl. Now, before I hollow out the bowl, I'm going to put a transitional element of some sort between here and here. One way is to put a bead. Another way is to come down and do a slight undercut, which creates a shadow line, but some technique. And so I'm going to prick it down. It won't quite match this curve because I want a little slightly different curve on the inside. So I want a little more off. It's not quite enough. Now I can actually tell thickness because I can run my fingers across this side for one. Second thing is I can look down and I can see that thickness. That's another point. I may want to take it down just a little bit more curve. Now I can put my hand on the back side to try to dampen some of that vibration. That's okay. It's okay for me. So I can sand it. I'm going to sand this edge slightly only to break these two corners. I don't want to run my fingers in there and cut my hand on a sharp corner. So this is just only to allow me to be able to do something like that without cutting myself. I didn't cut. So now I'm going to transition down into this inside. The depth here is established by the depth of that hole. So this is bowl turning. Shallow bowl turning. I can see the bottom, so I know I'm getting there. Now, this is the time to create the detail for this rim. I can put a bead here, I can do anything, but I've left enough wood that I can make some decisions about that. I looked around to see what tools I had, and I have a beading tool that was made out of a shallow fluted gouge at some time in the past. So I can come in here and cut a bead right here, right now. Easily done. Makes a nice transitional detail. So I need to take a little bit more off the outside now to clean that up, and I need to pick up the inside and finish it. Now, coming in here like this is going to be really difficult with the gouge. I'll come as close as I can, but I'm not going to go all the way. So now I need to smooth this out in here. I think I'm going to use a round nose scraper just to do that. Need my tool rest a smidge higher. And this is just for cleaning up this surface. And to get this edge, I'm going to go back to my skew chisel because I can get that down into this corner. And I do the same thing here on the outside. And finish it off. The shallow fluted gouge, which allows me to get in here tight. And on the other side, let's see how I'm going to do this. Now, one of the clues for good platters. If this surface here is not perfectly flat, once you put finish on it, every little irregularity will show. So spend a lot of time getting this smooth and flat here, mostly done with sanding. Could be any technique that you want, but sand that out, perfect your bead, sand your rim. And basically, that's all the aspects of doing this other than completing the bottom. And I'm not going to finish it off. You know what sanding looks like. So let me take this out and show you what we've got. I need to hold this somehow and do the bottom. If I put a pad here, piece of cloth, foam rubber, use my tailstock to press in here. Remember, we finished all this initially. All I have to now do is to take this down from this edge to match that. And the bottom will have been done. So that's the basics of turning a platter. With all these steps, you can then go to decorations. You can go to different shapes and sizes and configurations, small areas, large areas, all those different things. So I hope this helped you get started on turning platters. They can be small, they can be large. You can actually use them for service in your house with a good finish on them. Hope this helped. Keep watching, give us your comments, and we really need you to subscribe. But thank you very much. We'll see you in the next video.